Hey, this is John Swope recording a video on what we call an experiment we call hyper-personalized nudge emails, or HPNEs. So whenever we build a course for a client, we always recommend that they have regular communication with the students. And usually that takes the form of emails that are sent out on a Monday or some consistent day that kind of have a state of the union for what's happening in that course, what deadlines are that week, what a student should be focusing on, and obviously this is for synchronous courses. So we asked ourselves a research question. What we know is that encouragement and reminders increase course participation and they increase course completion rates. What about personalized encouragement and reminders, where a student felt as though the course team or the course director had a handle on where they were in the course and what they specifically should be doing next? In addition, we know from the research that instructor presence is an important part of students feeling engaged and, again, participating in and completing the course. So we asked ourselves these research questions. Could we create hyper-personalized nudge emails, and would those emails both increase engagement and would they increase completion rates for a course? And so what that means is that we'd send an email that, instead of saying, "Dear student, it's week 1 and here are all the deadlines," we would track where the students were in the course, how quickly they were completing the content, and we could say, "Dear Mary, welcome to week 4. Thanks for completing such and such an assignment this week. Here's the link to what you're responsible for." We'd give her the link to week 4. Or if someone hadn't started the course, we could send them a different message and say something along the lines of, "Hey, we know it's a busy time of year, but if you want to get started, here's what our students are enjoying so far in the course, and here's a link to where you could start," which is different than what Mary, who's keeping up, would be. And what we found was that in both cases, so both of our research questions, do HPNEs increase engagement and do HPNEs increase completion rates? The answer was yes. So let's start with participation. We had a control group. The control group got regular Monday emails that were not personalized. The experimental group got HPNE emails. What we found was that HPNEs increased participation by 2 metrics. So first of all, we had more participators. So the groups were even sized. We looked at how many actually participated in the course. We found that those who received the HPNE emails, the number of students who participated in the course, meaning did some activities, increased by 46%. And we found that the actual number of activities per person, so we excluded all the non-participators, but per person who actually got into the course, the number of activities that each person did was higher for our HPNE group. And what we saw was that this was sustained and driven by what you see in the purple bars here, which are when those HPNE emails went out. So when a purple bar happens, when an email goes out, you see these spikes, and those are consistent as we go through the course. The next question we asked was, do HPNEs increase completion? And we found that they did increase completion as well. So again, control group and experimental group were the same sizes. We found that among our control group, we had 14 completers, and among our experimental group, we had 31 completers. When we took a look at the completion rate, what percentage of the students are completing the course, we see that our control group matches pretty well our historical average. Historically, about 5% of the entire group of students will get in, start, and finish the course. And so we found that our experimental group actually doubled that number, and our control group was consistent with the historical average, which is what we would expect. So a few lessons we learned about these HPNEs, about how to send these emails. 1 is that timing is important. 2 is that language is important. And 3 is that HPNEs tend to attract late participators, which is unique to the HPNE format. I'll dive into these a little bit. So timing, MOOCs, open online courses, they have a very specific participation pattern. You have a lot of people register. About 50% of those will actually enter the course at least one time. And then you have a pretty steep drop off between weeks 1 and week 2 as people understand what's in the course, they get what they want out of it, and maybe they don't come back. And then it flattens out until you get to the end of the course. So what that means is that these emails are very important in a couple of places. So first of all, between week 1 and week 2, when you have that kind of steep decline, an HPNE helps quite a bit. And then also, as you get to the final week, as the deadline for completing the course approaches, that's another important time to send these emails. Secondly, language is important. We did this experiment twice, actually. And in the first version of the experiment, we had this odd dip where we sent an HPNE, but we did not see that typical spike. And we found that it really boiled down to, everything else was held the same. It really boiled down to language. We basically, because they were personalized, we were able to tell the user, hey, don't worry, this module is longer. So it's actually not due until 2 weeks from now. And that language was not actionable enough for the students to feel compelled to get back into the course. And then finally, HPNEs have this tendency to attract late participants. In a typical open online course, if a student does not enter in the first or second week, there is a very small chance that they will enter the course at all. If you don't have them in the first or second week, they generally won't join. With HPNEs, what we're able to do is we're able to pull more of those students in as the course goes on. Again, we did this experiment twice, and in the first experiment, we had experimental HPNE users participate for the first time after week 1, so after this spike where, for the most part, students will not enter if they don't come in week 1. We had 98 of them join for the HPNE group versus 74 for the control group after week 1. In experiment 2, we saw the same pattern. 67 of the HPNE receivers joined at some point after week 1 or started at some point after week 1 versus only 37 for the control group. So let's get into how you can run the same experiment. And again, it is experimental. I want to be careful about making sure that if you are running this experiment, that you are respecting your users' opt-out. In a lot of areas, that is the law. So we need to make sure that we are respecting our users' opt-out preferences. But this is how one would implement this. So there's a template that's a Google Sheet that has a lot of the logic for this. And that would contain your user info and the messages that you want to send. And you need to configure a few things in Amazon Web Services, mainly a set of AWS access keys, what's called an email configuration set. And then you need to have an email address that's verified by Amazon Simple Email Services to be able to send emails. And there are instructions for that in the template. We're not going to go into detail about how to generate these things, but you can generate them all in Amazon Web Services. So then what you would do is you would customize that template as you need based on your audience, your data, and your messaging needs. And so what I'm going to show is I'm going to show a simplified version of the template. So here's a very simple version of the template, and I'll walk through the parts of it. So we have 3 students here: Speedy Turtle, Average Aardvark, and Slow Hair, which is a decent way of distinguishing, again, kind of the types of students you might have. Typically, when we do this, we actually have many data points. We have not just the course grade, but also how many modules they've completed, what was their last activity completed, and we send emails based on these things. We'll just keep it simple for now. Let's just do the course grade. And so within these, you can either create a custom block, for that user. So you'll see these are email blocks. So you start with the email subject, and then it's just blocks in order. So you can imagine this is an email message. Good morning, Speedy. You're awesome. You nearly finished the course. Keep it up. And you'll see some T syntax, which we'll go over in a second. So you create these blocks, and we'd use a lot of formulas here to say hello and capture their first name, good morning, first name. And then there's often logic that is based on the data that you have. So here's a simple example. So if we look at the course grade, so we're sending different messages based on the course grade. So if they are a Speedy Turtle, you're nearly finished the course, keep it up. If they are average, keep up the good work. And if they haven't started, ready to get started. And again, these are conditional based on some of the data we have. And if we ran this, we'd actually usually use more data than what's in this simple example. And you can see there are these kind of shorthand. And this is just when you have longer text that you want to put into an email. So this is 4 lines with some links or a signature line you're going to use a lot. Then you can put those into templates with a identifier that starts with T dash and then reference them in here. And the way this would show up in the email is this will be written out. Here are some links to the activities in the course with links. And right now they're just placeholder links. So there's nothing in there. And then blank blocks are not counted. So you can have as many of these as you want. And at the end, we have a link to a survey and a link to a signature, again, in this simple example here. And the one part I didn't go over was this here. This is the meta information about when these emails were sent. So any email campaign, again, and some of the data you saw earlier, we had 3 email campaigns. So for any email campaign, I'd actually create a new one of these documents because we can also track whether the email was sent, whether it was opened, and whether it was clicked by the user. Getting back to implementation, what I've set up before this is I've set up 4 things. I've set up Amazon Web Services access keys that have access to the simple email service. I have a region in which my AWS account exists. I have what's called a email sending configuration set. And I have an email that I have approved with AWS SES to be able to send email from. And the instructions for how to do these are in the README here. We're not going to go into AWS in this particular demo. But once I have those things, then I can do this. So within this document, let's say script menu. And if you were using this document, you would copy it to your own Google Drive. I will say set credentials. And what this does is this asks me for all those things that I said. So I'm going to put in my AWS access key. I'll put in my secret key. And then it's going to ask me for my region. So in my case, I'm in US East 1 in AWS. You might be somewhere else. And it asked me for a name for my configuration set. I've just named it template test. And then it asked me for what email was I sending my emails from. So I'm sending from testemail.acme@gmail.com. And it's going to run for a second. And it'll say finished if it's done successfully. And now what I can do is I can start sending these emails. And you'll notice that we have one user that it says opt out here. It needs to be yes here. So opt out is extra information, but it needs to say yes here to send the email. So we actually have 3 users. We're actually only going to send 2 emails in this case. And the way that we do that is script menu, and we're going to say send bulk emails. And we get a date and an ID that confirms that the email was sent. And again, for the one that opted out, where we don't have yes in here, nothing was sent. So let's go look at those emails and then we'll get the statistics on them. So we're trying to see if the email is opened and whether the email was clicked. Our status just updated, the email was delivered. So let's go to Mailinator and let's check out Speedy Turtle. And we can see that Speedy Turtle got an email with their first name, hello Speedy, you've nearly finished the course, keep it up. There are some action items for them to go into activities in the course that would be activities for this particular person. A link to the survey. So I'm going to click on this just to take me to Google because it's not, we didn't put a real survey link in there. And I'm not going to check the other one. I'm going to look in here now. So now I can see that Speedy Turtle did open the email. I don't see a click yet. It runs on a job, so it doesn't do it immediately. So I can force it by saying, let me retrieve delivery statuses here. And that finished. And what I can see is that there was one click, and that was the click that I did on this survey here. There was one click on this email. So I can see that this particular user was delivered the email, they opened the email, and they clicked on something in the email. This user was delivered the email, they have not opened it yet, and this user was not delivered an email. And in this method, I can send personalized emails to my users. So what this shows is that we can send personalized, individualized emails to our users based on where they are, what they're doing in the course. Our research shows this does increase participation and engagement, but just again, to keep in mind that this is an experiment and to make sure that you're respecting the opt-out preferences of your users. But we do think this is exciting. We do think this is something that is very indicative of the open online course experience where students are looking for a little bit more connection and a little bit more kind of personalized instruction about where they in particular need to be, and they respond well to that. So if you try using this, I wish you the best and enjoy.